You're dirt. We think you're dirt, Paul.
Who is we?
The West, all the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They think you're dirt. They think you're dung. You're worthless.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you are saying, sir.
Oh, come on, don't bullshit me, Paul. You're the smartest man here. You got them all eating out of your hands. You could own this freaking hotel, except for one thing. You're black. You're not even a nigger. You're an African.
Rwanda, Eswatini, South Sudan, Uganda, and now Ghana. This is the so-called third country club. And it is only growing. Every few months, more countries join the list. This is all part of Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration in the U.S. Here's what's happening. The U.S. has signed deals with several nations, mostly in the global south, to accept undocumented immigrants deported from American soil. These are called third country agreements. But this raises some big questions. Yes, illegal immigration is a global challenge, but is this really the best way to handle it? What happens to the deportees once they land in these third countries? Why are so many nations agreeing to take them in? And why is Africa becoming a dumping ground for U.S. deportations? Our next report answers these questions.
Home to about 35 million people, Ghana is the second most populous country in West Africa. And now, it will also house U.S. deportees.
We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the U.S. And we agreed with them that West African nationals, were acceptable.
After a bilateral agreement with the U.S., illegal immigrant nationals from various West African countries are being sent to Ghana. 14 of them have already arrived in the country. Ghana is the latest country to join a long list of so-called third countries, which have agreed to accept people deported from the U.S. as part of President Donald Trump's sweeping crackdown on illegal immigration. Since returning to the White House, he has clamped down on undocumented migrants and pledged to deport millions of people who are living in the U.S. illegally. So Washington has negotiated agreements to send them to countries other than the U.S. Now, several countries in the global south have become third countries, including El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico, and Paraguay in Latin America. Last month, the U.S. deported 7 people to Rwanda. In July, 5 were sent to Eswatini, and 8 others to South Sudan. Recently, Uganda also reached a third country deal. And now, Ghana has joined the club. But why are these countries signing deals? They want Trump's goodwill, be it in negotiations over tariffs, cuts in U.S. aid, or visa restrictions.
First, we were slapped with 10% tariff that was increased to 15%, and then we're included in 36 countries that were going to be placed on a visa ban. But in the meantime, all 5-year visas were cancelled, and we were restricted to single entry 3 months. It shows the tightening situation in our foreign relations.
Illegal migration is a global issue. It poses several problems, from security concerns to economic burdens. But is this the best way to deal with it? According to UN experts, such agreements have left people stranded in faraway places, at risk of torture and other inhuman treatment. People are being sent to countries with poor human rights records, and places they have never lived in. Critics also say the process is often arbitrary. There are concerns about lack of transparency and due process for those deported. And some deportees are imprisoned illegally with no end in sight. And thirdly, there is added pressure on the host countries to bear the burden of deportations, while already facing economic, social, and infrastructure challenges. Which is why some countries have pushed back. Nigeria says it already has enough problems and over 230 million people to care for. Apart from this, there is a jarring pattern here. fact that mass deportations are being made to South American and African countries, which have historically been seen as unworthy of respect or equal partnership in the eyes of the West. Ironically, mostly Western policies and interventions drove poverty, displacement, and instability in the global South. And now, the region has become a dumping ground for deportations. And not just from the US. The EU and the UK have also mulled similar controversial third country plans. So yes, illegal immigration is a growing global burden. Offloading deportees arbitrarily and without the right systems in place doesn't solve the problem, but only perpetuates it.
I had a vague idea that Rio de Janeiro was a place, so I kind of kept that in the back of my mind in reserve. And if all these other places fail, I could probably wind up, join the Navy or something and go to Rio, and I could escape for a few minutes from being black.
Back in 2021, Jair Bolsonaro made a prediction. He was the president of Brazil then, and he said his future held only 3 possibilities: prison, death, or victory. That was 4 years ago. Now, Brazil's Supreme Court has made the choice for him. It will be prison, and that too for 27 years. What for? For plotting a failed military coup. So what exactly happened here? Also, why is Donald Trump jumping to Bolsonaro's defense? And is this the end of Bolsonaro or just the beginning of something bigger? Tonight we'll break it down for you, starting with the man himself, Jair Bolsonaro. He's 70 years old. Until 3 years back, he was the president of Brazil. In 2022, he contested an election for another term. His opponent was Lula da Silva. Lula won, Bolsonaro lost. But he refused to go quietly. Prosecutors say that he spent months sowing doubts, especially on Brazil's electronic voting system. When that did not work, he pressured military leaders. He was plotting to cling to power. The plan never got full military backing, but it did lead to an unforgettable day. January 8, 2023, thousands of Bolsonaro supporters stormed the Brazilian Congress, the presidential palace, and the Supreme Court in Brasilia. It was like Brazil's January 6th moment, like how Trump supporters had stormed the US Congress. So Bolsonaro was accused of plotting the coup. The case went to the Supreme Court, and the top court has finally delivered its verdict. It's a split verdict. 4 out of 5 justices found Bolsonaro guilty. The charges range from plotting a coup to leading a criminal organization. One judge dissented. He argued that there wasn't enough evidence to convict.
The defendant Jair Bolsonaro was convicted by a majority of the crimes here specific to leading an armed criminal organization, in addition to attempted violent abolition of the democratic rule of law, coup, damage qualified by violence and serious threat against the union's property and considerable damage to the victim and deterioration of the listed property.
So Bolsonaro is convicted. He now faces 27 years and 3 months in prison. He's also barred from running for office till 2060. That's 8 years after the end of his prison sentence. And the sentence itself is historic. No Brazilian president has ever been convicted of trying to overthrow the system that they once led. But here's the paradox. Bolsonaro may be a convict, but he's far from politically dead, because his base remains loyal. Tens of thousands of people are ready to march for him on the streets. His allies in the Brazilian Congress are pushing for an amnesty bill. And then there's a family factor. His sons are politicians. His wife, Michelle, is already seen as a potential heir to his movement. Politicians are jockeying to inherit the Bolsonarista vote. And the real conflict now is not just between Bolsonaro and the court. It's between institutions and a movement that refuses to vanish. And then there's Donald Trump. It wouldn't be a Bolsonaro story without him. The U.S. president counts Jair Bolsonaro as a close ally. They're almost ideological twins. Bolsonaro is called Brazil's Trump, so the U.S. was quick to denounce the ruling. Trump called it a witch hunt.
President well, but I know him as the leader of a country, and I always found him to be very straight, very outstanding. Actually, as a man, a very outstanding man. I think it's a terrible thing, very terrible. I think it's very bad for the kid.
And Trump has gone further than words. Remember, he slapped 50% tariffs on Brazilian imports just for prosecuting Bolsonaro. That was the reason he gave. The tariffs on Brazil were because of the case on Jair Bolsonaro. And you can understand why Trump is so sympathetic. Bolsonaro's trial looks eerily similar to Trump's own legal battles in the U.S. It's political persecution disguised as justice.
Well, I watched that trial. I know him pretty well. Foreign leader. I thought he was a good president of Brazil. And it's very surprising that that could happen. That's very much like they tried to do with me, but they didn't get away with it at all. But I can only say this. I knew him as president of Brazil. He was a good man. And I don't see that happening.
So what happens next? Bolsonaro's lawyers have already promised to appeal, even at the international level, and that could drag this case for years. In the meantime, he's under house arrest. Congressional allies, like I said, are fighting to pass an amnesty bill, but it won't be easy because Lula's government is unlikely to let it pass. Meanwhile, the Bolsonaro camp is strategizing. The next election is in 2026. If the man himself cannot run, maybe his wife will, or so they hope. Because Bolsonaro has political momentum. And this story is important because Brazil is not just another country, it is Latin America's largest democracy. It's a major player in global trade and energy. A destabilized Brazil will have ripple effects everywhere. Add Trump's sanctions and fiery rhetoric, and you have a deadly mix. A geopolitical tug-of-war over Brazil's future. So this may be the end of Bolsonaro's politics for now, but not of Bolsonaro the idea. And for Brazil's democracy, that's the bigger challenge ahead.
The fact that we haven't been able to establish an actual building to carry out counter-racism?
Well, it's been my observation of buildings and the history of buildings. People in the early 60s, I'm just going by what I've been told and what I haven't even seen them, but I heard that there are some buildings called the pyramids. And I heard that people talking about, nobody knows how to put together and all like that. All the people who put it together are long gone and all like, and people have been studying them for centuries and all like that. And they're sitting there. And so, logically speaking, what does that mean in a functional sense? They are buildings.
For centuries, Black Americans' significant contributions to architecture and design have often been overlooked. A new book chronicles the resilience of one family who's left an indelible mark on American construction since the mid-1800s. Allie Rogan spoke with Cheryl McKissick Daniel, CEO of the construction and design company that bears her family's name, and author of The Black Family Who Built America, The McKissicks, 2 Centuries of Daring Pioneers.
Cheryl McKissick Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Your family's legacy stretches back many generations. It is anchored by a man named Moses McKissick. Tell us about him.
Moses McKissick was the first descendant from our family who came to this country in 1790 as a slave. He was taught the trade of making bricks, and he resided in North Carolina. His son was Moses McKissick II. He was also a carpenter and master builder. He was actually given as a wedding gift to the Maxwell family, and they lived in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And after emancipation, Moses McKissick moved to Pulaski, Tennessee, and that's when he first started our business. The interesting thing about Pulaski, Tennessee is where the Ku Klux Klan started. This is the deep, deep South.
You mentioned this is the deep, deep South shortly after emancipation. What sort of discrimination did your ancestors face in the early days of starting this firm?
in the early days, they had many white patrons because these slave masters would help the slaves start their own business. But it wasn't until later on the white people began to feel that blacks were a threat to them and their livelihood. And so that's when the McKissicks began to shift their clientele to the black communities. So that was churches, that was historically black colleges, things of that nature.
And what sort of barriers, when you took over the company, as you did more than 150 years later, what sort of barriers did you face?
Well, when I first took over the company, it was the beginning of minority and women-owned programs. So I was definitely an anomaly. Most of the time, the thought was that, I could not provide quality work, or, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have good staff. I didn't have funding, all these things that are myths. It was not true. I came from a long line, as the book lays out, of builders and architects. So we definitely knew what we were doing.
Tell me about some of the projects that you are the proudest of over the course of your career.
Well, the first chapter of my book talks about the Barclay Arena, and I'm extremely proud of that project. That project catapulted us into the transportation business, the rail business, because we had to move the rail where the trains were being stored to make way for the Barclay Arena's foundation. And so that was the beginning of our rail division, which then brought on clients like the MTA. I'm also excited about our work at New York City airports, from LaGuardia to now the new Terminal 1 at JFK. That's almost 3 million square feet of state-of-the-art airport. And we have been working on that project, I want to say, 6 years. We've also done quite a bit of work for Columbia University, Manhattanville campus, EDC, which is the Economic Development Corporation. We've been able to work with them to build the new state-of-the-art Coney Island Hospital, which we are excited about, and the same as the Harlem Hospital on 135th Street.
You end the book talking about your hopes for black entrepreneurs to be able to pay it forward and create generational wealth and success. What does that future look like to you?
Well, I believe that black businesses should focus on ownership. I think that creates an ecosystem that can empower a whole community. If we look at JFK Terminal 1, the owners there included Magic Johnson and Jim Reynolds from Loop Capital. And as a result, the top of the food chain dictates how the rest of the project is going to work and who is going to work on it. They wanted to have strong minority and women-owned business participation. And so that's how I see it playing out in the future, more ownership.
And this book, it's not just a memoir, it's not just your story, but it's also a reframing of who built America. What do you want readers to take away from reading this story?
Everyone can have a legacy. My interest in my family story started with just a family tree that my grandmother had in her Bible that I got my hands on, and it was so exciting to me that I filled it out with the rest of our generations, my generation, my kids' generation. And I just think it's important that we document where we came from. So I hope readers can take that away.
The book is The Black Family Who Built America. Cheryl McKissick Daniel, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
This the city of Chicago.
Tensions are rising in Chicago as President Trump signals that he'll soon send troops and ICE agents to the city as part of his crackdown on crime and illegal immigration. This weekend, he posted on Truth Social, Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Leaving the White House today, he rattled off some numbers.
You know how many people were killed in Chicago last weekend? 8. You know how many people were killed in Chicago the week before? 7. You know how many people were wounded? 74 people were wounded. You think there's worse than that? I don't think so.
Numbers from the Chicago Police Department show that through the end of August, murders were down 31% from the same period in 2024. Brandis Friedman is anchor of Chicago Tonight on member station WTTW. Brandis, all this attention on social media especially, he's calling this Chipocalypse now. How are people reacting, or how are people feeling about this in Chicago?
So this weekend, we've seen a number of people take to the streets, thousands and thousands of demonstrators. I think just yesterday they stopped by the ICE Chicago field office, as well as the federal courthouse, Trump Tower, protesting what they're hearing from the president. I think their intention is to send him a message that they won't tolerate what they believe to be sort of fear-mongering. We know that the president has been making these threats for a couple of weeks. On social media, we see Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that, that this is not normal, and saying that it is the president basically declaring war on an American city and that it should not be tolerated. And something similar from Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago as well.
I know this weekend, big Chicago celebration among the Mexican-American community, Mexican Independence Day. Is there fear among the immigrant community?
I think so, yes. I think it is safe to say, yes, there is some fear. The Mexican Independence Day parade in Pilsen, the Pilsen neighborhood, it did step off yesterday, but with noticeably fewer people. I think there are certainly some people who are fearful of coming out, fearful of those events being I hate to use, this kind of metaphor, but like sort of shooting fish in a barrel, right? Making it an easy target for ICE agents to round up people who may be undocumented. Another festival that's supposed to take place next weekend, the El Grito Festival, which is supposed to happen in downtown Grant Park, that one has already been canceled, because you're also hearing from some folks say, we are still going to celebrate our culture and our heritage and not going to allow what's happening to sort of steal that joy from us. But, I also heard someone else say that right now, this is not a good time for the Mexican-American community, that they are being targeted by the American government, and that there's nothing to celebrate right now, that they should be sort of hunkering down and taking care of themselves and each other.
Another reason why the president is focusing on Chicago is that it's a sanctuary city. And Tom Homan, the border czar, had this to say about sanctuary cities on CNN's State of the Union today.
You can expect action in most sanctuary cities across the country. President Trump's prioritized sanctuary cities because sanctuary cities knowingly release illegal alien public safety threats to the streets every day. That's where the problem is.
Has the police said whether or not they're going to cooperate with the ICE agents when they get there?
The police department and the mayor have said they will not cooperate. They will not support these efforts, but they will not hinder them, right? So what Superintendent Snelling has said here in Chicago is that if they are called, they will first send a more senior officer to that scene and make a determination of what's happening, right? And whether or not it warrants Chicago police officers to be on the scene as a matter of public safety and sort of protecting anything from getting out of hand, and to enforce municipal code or municipal laws, but they will certainly not be lending a hand to the ICE agents who are on the ground.
And what about the Chicago public schools? Have they said anything about if agents were to come even in the vicinity of a school?
They have. I think the big conversation for Chicago public schools has been whether or not they should shift to remote learning in the interest of protecting students who are undocumented, protecting them from ICE agents. As a sanctuary city, the district tends to be in lockstep with the mayor on the issue of immigration and protecting students, and not allowing ICE agents to come to their schools for ICE enforcement, for immigration enforcement.
I know we talked about Governor Pritzker. He said that he'll go to court if troops arrive in Chicago. Has the mayor said anything about what sort of action he would take?
The mayor has not. I think he's sort of leaning on the state for this one, right? So we're hearing a lot more from Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, kind of waiting to see what laws the president, or what method the president should take to do what he's planning on doing, right? Starting with ICE agents and then eventually the National Guard if it becomes necessary. and then taking them to court. Nothing necessarily legal action that the mayor has stated, but obviously this is one place where the mayor and the governor are in total agreement with regards to resisting what it is the Trump administration is attempting to do.
Trump has long been talking about Chicago. In the 2016 presidential campaign, I remember he was always talking about Chicago crime and about how he could clean it up. And he also phrased it as a sort of reaching out to the black community in Chicago by talking about that it would help them. Why do you think he talks about Chicago so much?
I think a lot of Chicagoans would like to know that, why he is often, why we often hear him talking about Chicago the way that he does. And, with regards to the crime issue, there are black and brown communities that are feeling the effects of crime much more regularly than other parts of the city of Chicago. So that's not to say that there is not a problem, but the problem is certain. I think you'll hear this from local leaders. The problem is certainly much better than it is, or than it was, than it has been. It has definitely been worse than it is right now. That does not mean it's okay. And certainly there is work to be done. But why he is always, why he's attracted to talking about Chicago the way he does, I could not tell you.
Brandis Friedman from Chicago Tonight at WTTW. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Attorneys for a college student at the center of a viral traffic stop video say his civil rights were violated and he was left with serious injuries.
We're going to get to the truth of the matter one way or the other.
Today, civil rights attorneys Ben Crump and Harry Daniels filed a federal lawsuit. They called on the Department of Justice to come in and conduct its own investigation after the state attorney's office cleared the JSO officer involved of any criminal wrongdoing.
News for Jack's reporter Alicia Hatcher was there as the attorneys laid out their case.
I hope my story get heard today.
William McNeil Jr. stood alongside his civil rights attorneys Ben Crump and Harry Daniels as they announced a federal lawsuit against multiple Jacksonville sheriff's officers, Sheriff T.K. Waters, and the city itself. Photos of William McNeil Jr.'s injuries sat in front of them as they described what they say happened during a February traffic stop. Video of the incident sparked outrage in multiple investigations into how the officer handled it. After an investigation, the state attorney's office said it would take no action against Officer D. Bowers.
It is because of the policy, the pattern of allowing racial profiling that cannot stand. Because if we let this stand, we're saying that the laws in Florida aren't right.
The officer said he stopped McNeil for failing to turn on his headlights and buckle his seatbelt. After seeing his SUV parked outside a house the officer was surveillancing for drug activity. Investigators said McNeil was asked to get out of his car 12 times before the officer broke his window and hit McNeil in the face with an open hand and took him to the ground. McNeil says the stop left him with more than just bruises.
On that day, I really just wanted my side of the story to be heard.
The lawsuit seeks not just damages for McNeil, but also changes to the culture of policing in Jacksonville. Alicia Hatcher, Channel 4, the local station.
The concept of Jesus saved me, white man saved me, is a contradictory thought circuit in the brain computer when one has to objectively think about what actually is happening to us as a people under the system of racism, white supremacy. In the brain computer.
Okay, so John, I'm really curious about what we're going to discuss today, brain-computer interfaces. What does that mean?
Yeah, okay. The term refers to technology that can detect and translate the electrical signals that are coming from your brain.
Okay.
Some of these devices can also send electrical signals to your brain.
Wow.
There are a few consumer products that are worn like a cap or a headset and detect brain activity from outside the skull. We're not going to talk about those. Okay. They're not that great. Some of them may help you meditate, but that's unclear. The devices we're going to be talking about are the ones that are implanted inside the skull, which is a much better place to listen to the brain's electrical activity. Some of these devices are put on the surface of the brain, and other ones, like the Neuralink device, They actually thread electrodes into the brain itself.
But why would someone want something inside their skull listening to their brain?
So to answer that, I'm going to go all the way back to 2004. One of the first people to ever get a BCI was a guy named Matt Nagel. He's a young man who got stabbed in the neck, sadly, and was left paralyzed, so he couldn't move his arms or legs. A team of scientists asked him if he wanted to try a device that was then called BrainGate. The idea was this might let him move a computer cursor using just his thoughts. I managed to find this old video of him testing that BCI with a researcher named Abe Kaplan.
What do you want to do first?
So keep in mind, this is all 20-some years ago.
I'm going to open my email first. Okay. I'm going to open the first one. You're going to open the first one.
Was that the sound of the email opening? The cha-ching?
Totally, yeah. He was able to do things that he had no ability to do with his body, but he could do with his brain.
That sounds like life-changing technology. That's a pretty amazing. Okay, so this was in 2004. Has the technology advanced since then?
In a lot of ways, yes. That BrainGate device that Matt Nagel used required actual wires to go through his skull. Nowadays, devices are moving to wireless communication. They also use many more electrodes, so they can listen to the electrical activity of more neurons. That makes them more accurate. And the latest devices can do a lot more than just, move a computer cursor. They can let a person who is paralyzed control a robotic arm accurately enough to sip from a cup of water.
Whoa.
Some can even provide that person with a sense of touch by sending signals from a robotic hand back to the brain. And BCIs can even decode speech signals in the brain, which means a person who can no longer talk because of a stroke or a disease like ALS, they can now communicate.
I've fully come around to this. This is amazing. So you're saying someone who can't control their own vocal tract can speak again with this assistance?
Pretty much. The BCI detects the words that a person wants to say, and then it uses the computer to do the speaking. A lot of the work on speech BCIs has been done in California, including at the University of California, Davis. Let me play you a recording from UC Davis. This is of a man named Casey Harrell. He has ALS and can no longer physically produce words, but he can speak through a BCI that creates an artificial voice.
I am good.
I mean, it's not super fast, but it's totally understandable. And this is coming from his thoughts?
More or less. This particular BCI, it relies on signals from the motor cortex in the brain. So the part of the brain that usually tells the muscles that are involved in speech what to do.
Oh, so the neurons used for signaling, like your voice box, your throat, your mouth, that's what the BCI is tapping into.
Exactly. So when someone attempts to speak, the brain starts sending those signals, and the BCI is able to turn those signals into words. This is something that several companies, including Neuralink, have included in their BCIs. But, of course, it's all experimental. We've had 20-plus years after the first BCI worked in a person, and there are still no FDA-approved brain-computer interfaces that are on the market.
I'm surprised by that. Why hasn't the FDA approved any BCIs?
Well, they haven't really had any submitted.
Oh.
And I talked about the reason for that with Dr. Lee Hochberg. He's one of the scientists who've been in the BCI game since, the beginning. Lee was one of the scientists who created the BrainGate device we heard Matt Nagel using a few minutes ago. I don't quite know how to summarize his resume, so I'm just going to play you what he said when I asked him to list all of his credentials.
I'm a critical care neurologist and vascular neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital. I'm also a professor of engineering at Brown University and a neurologist and researcher at the Providence VA Medical Center. In addition, I direct the Center for Neurotechnology and Neurorecovery at Mass General, and I'm one of the co-organizers for the Implantable Brain-Computer Interface Collaborative Community.
This sounds like a Hollywood job, but it's real.
Yeah, it's a real job. You get the idea. He's got a lot of credentials.
Yeah. So what did Lee have to say about where we're at with BCIs, which sounds like not as far as we could be?
One thing he said was he never thought BCIs would take so long to become a commercial product. But he also talked about some of the reasons why it has taken so long. It turns out it's really hard to take something that works in the lab, with lots of computers and wires and technicians, and turn that into something that functions reliably for years inside a person's skull and can also communicate with their smartphone.
I can't imagine why. Making this like portable, reliable forever sounds easy.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
There are a few steps in there, right?
Yeah,
and then there's the whole FDA approval process.
Sure.
It's slow, especially when you're dealing with technology like this that's completely new. And one more thing is that these devices are expensive. So companies that make them have to be thinking about whether they'll be covered by a person's health insurance. Despite all those things, Lee told me the industry is really finally close to getting actual products on the market.
Wow.
I hope it's just in a few years that if I see and I'm taking care of somebody in the neuro ICU who suddenly lost the ability to move or lost the ability to speak, what I want to say is, I'm sorry this happened, but we have a technology that can restore your communication tomorrow. And really mean that if that conversation is happening on a Wednesday, that the technology will be deployed on Thursday and working.
You're saying this could be the reality for some patients. Like when?
It could be just a few years. Brain-computer interfaces have been tested in dozens of patients now. There are at least half a dozen well-financed companies that are working on this technology.
Wow.
And you've got artificial intelligence, which is making it much faster and easier to decode a person's brain signals. On the other hand, all that progress is raising some questions about what you might call brain privacy.
This has been my lingering fear this whole time. Like, I want to be into this, but I'm worried about the intrusion of this technology. Devices that read our thoughts and use that information, are we ready for that?
Well, that was exactly the question that some researchers had. They did a study that looked at this issue in BCIs that decode speech. So remember how those devices initially relied on a person trying to get their vocal apparatus to actually form a word?
Uh-huh.
There's a new generation of devices that kind of goes the next step. It can actually detect a person's inner monologue. That voice in your head that says things like, is this meeting ever going to be over?
I don't have an inner monologue.
Not everybody has an inner monologue. This is something that it doesn't work for everybody.
I'm safe.
Yeah, exactly. But if you do have one, it's the easiest way to get sort of fluent speech out of a brain-computer interface.
Whoa.
So what the authors found was there are ways to let people who are using a speech BCI switch off that inner monologue function, But still, it's a little disturbing. And one of the people who's worried about this is Nita Farahani. She's a professor of law and philosophy at Duke. She wrote a book called The Battle for Your Brain that talks about BCIs a lot. Nita told me she's all for better brain interfaces that will help people who are paralyzed.
Yeah.
But she says things could get kind of weird when some of these functions come to consumer devices, like, say, a headset that lets you play a video game or post on social media using just your thoughts.
The more we push this research forward, the more transparent our brains become, and that's a double-edged sword, and we have to recognize that this era of brain transparency really is an entirely new frontier for us that we haven't even begun to grapple with.
Yeah, brain transparency, brain privacy.
Mm-hmm.
This all sounds like where we started. Dystopian sci-fi, except it's real.
It totally does. And that is why Farahani and a lot of the scientists who actually work on BCIs, they're trying to ensure that, say, a marketing company can't just eavesdrop on our thoughts.
Yeah, if I get ads delivered to my brain, I'm going to be mad.
You and everybody else, but don't think there isn't somebody thinking about it.
I won't think anything. I'm going to keep this non-monologue on lock. Well, thank you so much, John Hamilton. It's great to have you on Shortwave.
Always a pleasure, Emily.
North Carolina.
I'm Elvis Menayese. Most students around Charlotte returned to school a few weeks ago, but for a small group of minority students, their learning started Monday in a non-traditional environment. Here's a report on an effort to support children who face challenges learning in a traditional setting.
2, 1.
A kid cut a red ribbon at a church in South Charlotte to mark the opening of the Creative Learning Institute. The micro school will serve 10 homeschooled children, all of whom are African American. LeJean Catino says she opened the program to fill a void.
Sometimes some children can't move as fast. They need a little more one-on-one interaction than what the public school can sometimes offer them.
Between the 2023 to 2024 school year, there were over 95,000 homeschools enrolling more than 157,000 students. Last year, there were over 100,000 homeschools. Lynette Jones' 10-year-old son will be attending the Charlotte program. Jones says her kids were introduced to the wrong things when attending school in Florida.
Drugs, kids with anger issues, anxiety with our children not being able to cope during the school day, get the things that they needed. Had a son with speech issues. He wasn't getting what he needed.
The school will serve kindergarten to 12th grade kids and is open to all ethnic backgrounds. Students will attend class there for 2 days per week. The program hopes to serve 50 students. Elvis Menayese, WFA News.
Why haven't you learned anything?
New national test scores are out today, measuring 8th graders' science skills, and for 12th graders, it was math and reading. The scores are part of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, also known as the nation's report card, and they come after massive cuts to the U.S. Education Department. It oversees the national assessment, which is required by Congress. NPR education reporter Sequoia Carrillo has been following this. So, Sequoia, what do the new test scores show us?
So these tests were taken in spring of 2024. So this is the first report for these students since the pandemic. And a few things stood out. In 12th grade math, scores dropped about 3 points from pre-pandemic levels, while 8th graders followed a similar pattern with a 4-point average drop in science. These might not sound like huge drops, but I want to note something. In both science and math, drops happened across all achievement levels, so both low and high-performing students dropped this cycle. Reading scores also dipped for nearly all 12th graders compared to the last test in 2019. But one important thing to note here is when you compare today's scores to the first nation's report card for 12th grade reading more than 30 years ago, today's average score is 10 points lower. I talked to some of the folks who oversee these tests, and they said this report follows a pattern, one we've known about for a while. Scores from the lowest performing students are at a historic low, and they're continuing on a decline that started more than a decade ago.
I've been hearing some Republicans say that Biden policies are to blame for the low scores because the students took these tests during the Biden administration. So how much does federal policy influence what happens in the classroom?
The federal government is not allowed to dictate what is taught in the classrooms at all. So experts avoid linking NAEP scores to any particular administration. Also, these are trends, like I said, that go back several presidential administrations, well before the pandemic. The tests are drawn up by a bipartisan group of local and state education leaders. They include teachers and principals. The assessment is supposed to show people what is happening to students in classrooms, not why it's happening. Matt Malkus is Deputy Director of Education Policy at the conservative-leaning American Enterprise Institute. He explains the role of the U.S. government as somewhat of a scoreboard for the country's education.
The federal government is in a unique position to tell us what's happening and for whom. Just because the federal government is good at being that scoreboard doesn't mean that it has the capacity to fix these issues. That's a job for the states.
Now, back in March, the Education Department cut almost half of its staff. Do we know how all of that impacted the release?
So a senior official at the National Center for Education Statistics who oversee this test briefed reporters on condition of anonymity that there are currently only 2 senior staffers left working on the nation's report card. In order to get today's results out, they had to rely on workers from other teams within the department. But that is about to change. The same senior official said they recently received a waiver from the Education Secretary to hire for 8 more positions being added before the end of the year so that the department can meet its goals in 2026 and 2028 under congressional mandate.
That's NPR's Sequoia Carrillo. Thank you for educating us on this report.
What they give you, blood? 3 months, man. What you doing in here anyway? You ought to be home with your mama. How old are you, boy?
13.
13? Damn. The bastards must be running out of niggas to arrest.
State where it's not prohibited for a juvenile to carry a firearm. It's one of the things that I haven't seen in any other state.
Those armed teens responsible for carjackings, shootings, and murders across the St. Louis region. Tonight, questions grow about our juvenile justice system, and it is the focus of a First Alert 4 Investigate series, Kids or Criminals? Good evening, I'm Corey Stark alongside Morgan Harris. Sam has the night off.
Police agencies around the bi-state say to keep you safe, something needs to change. First Alert 4 Chief Investigator Lauren Traeger has rare and exclusive access to the juvenile court system as we begin our series tonight.
My intentions wasn't on hurting anybody.
Now at work at his mom's St. Louis bake shop.
What my mama finna say, how long I'm finna be in jail.
17-year-old Tyron knows the exact moment his life took a turn.
Got in trouble at school for bringing a gun to school.
A gun in school, and he got caught. No one was hurt, but he was in serious trouble.
Overwhelming, really scared. They took him straight to jail after that. He stayed there for a week in the detention center. But yeah, really scary.
Tyron, one of hundreds of cases sent through the juvenile court system in St. Louis City and County every single year. Some for minor crimes, others for extremely serious ones, putting the public at risk. The juvenile court system this summer under a serious spotlight, especially given a recent case of teens suspected of 2 carjackings in 24 hours.
These are kids committing very dangerous crimes that is going to kill someone.
The point system's not working.
Recently, some police got critical of what's called the juvenile point system. It is central to the question, kids or criminals, and it's meant to help decide which juveniles should be in detention centers.
It does have points, that is correct.
So to explain it to you, we got exclusive access inside St. Louis City's juvenile courts.
So this is a score sheet. It's a one-page score sheet.
When a juvenile is arrested, Chief Attorney Jim Michael says this score sheet helps determine detention or something else, like an ankle monitor. Agreed on statewide in 2013 by committees of court officials, it gives points for the type of offense. Unlawful use of a gun for one equals automatic detention. That's what happened to Tyron. The system gives points, too, for priors or flight risks. Anything over 15 points equals detention. In just St. Louis City last year, 245 juveniles were detained before their cases were decided. But Michael says there is discretion. Officials can override the point system.
We absolutely take it seriously because it is about public safety. It's also about the juvenile's safety.
Legal precedence, he says, requires them to consider the, quote, least restrictive means of protecting the public and the juvenile. Bottom line, Michael says each case is a kid.
We treat these juveniles and we try and help them get their lives straight.
The idea is not to punish.
It is not to punish. It is a treatment court. That's right. Really, all they're looking for is what are the treatment options? What's the least restrictive means by which this juvenile can be treated and public safety can be protected?
He's not a bad person. He made a bad decision.
Tyron says he learned he'd rather be under his mom's watchful eye than a judge's.
This is not me. I had to realize, like, this is not a place that I should be.
Juvenile court, a second chance to make something of himself.
Just to make my mama proud, so I can just take care of them. Take care of them. That's all I want to do is take care of them.
Tyron knows what he did was wrong. He was in a debilitating car accident a few years ago and has lost several family members to gun violence. He successfully completed house arrest, got his high school diploma while under court supervision. He's also been participating in a program by the Urban League called Reroute, which helps give support to young people. But there has been increasing strain on the juvenile system, largely because of a law that recently went into effect. We're going to explain that in the next part of our series, Kids or Criminals, coming up tomorrow at 6. I'm Lauren Traeger. First Alert 4 investigates.
I'm getting in the elevator, and these 2 high school white boys tried to get on with me. And I just dove off. I said, y'all ain't killing me. I am scared of young white boys. If you white and under 21, I am running for the hill. What the hell is wrong with these white kids shooting up the school?
Many children are just beginning a new school year, but it is one already touched by tragedy. A former student opened fire at a Catholic school in Minneapolis in August. 2 children were killed, at least 18 were wounded. That's the latest in the more than 400 school shootings that have happened since Columbine, according to data from the Washington Post. Since then, a multi-billion-dollar industry has emerged around school security, and NPR's Meg Anderson takes us on a trip to see what's for sale. It's a steamy day in Grapevine, Texas, but that buzzing you hear, it's not mosquitoes, it's a drone.
We use drones to stop school shootings.
That's Justin Marston. He's the CEO of Campus Guardian Angel, and he's selling these drones. We're outside the National School Safety Conference. 3 pilots are doing a demonstration. The drones are whizzing around like tiny helicopters, circling a test dummy on a pedestal. He's the shooter in this demo.
Going a little high here, pick up some altitude.
The drones are meant to disorient. They can even spit out pepper balls. Eventually, they'll ram into the dummy, knocking it to the ground like a bowling pin. This technology is just one example on a long list of things schools can buy to try to deter a mass shooter. Business is booming.
The school safety and security industry has grown rapidly over the past decade in particular.
Sonali Rajan is with the research arm of Everytown for Gun Safety, which advocates for gun control. According to the market research firm Omdia, the school security industry is now worth as much as $4 billion, and it's projected to keep growing.
The challenge right now is that these school safety products, the vast majority of these, have absolutely no evidence guiding their effectiveness.
Inside the school safety conference, there's an expo hall and a lot more for sale. Down the aisles, people are selling panic buttons, bulletproof whiteboards, facial recognition technology, training simulators, body armor, guns, and tasers. Sarah McNeely with Sam Medical is selling Stop the Bleed kits.
Tourniquet, trauma shears.
She says their customers are EMTs, fire departments, military medics, but increasingly school districts. Tom McDermott is with C.O.W.S, a company that makes metal detectors. He says schools used to be a small fraction of their U.S. business. Now, they're the majority.
Which is nuts. You consider the Secret Service uses, Major League Baseball, NFL, theme parks, they use us. It's not right. I mean, we need to solve this problem. It's good for business, but we don't need to be selling to schools.
Mo Kennedy leads the National Association of School Resource Officers, the group that organizes this conference. He says the expo hall is just one part of the gathering. They also train school police officers on how to work with kids who have experienced trauma and how to intervene before violence occurs.
We're asking a lot of that officer.
So, he says, when a shooting happens, they need whatever tools they can get. Gun violence experts say simple things like locked doors can make a difference. Authorities say that likely saved many lives last month in Minneapolis. But that doesn't necessarily prevent a shooting. Jill Peterson, a criminology professor at Hamline University, says people who plan a shooting but don't carry it out often change their minds for 2 reasons. One is that they can't access a gun. The other is that someone helps them when they're in crisis.
We're spending billions of dollars that could be going to mental health or counselors.
Still, she says, she understands the allure of an impenetrable school.
And I think it preys on people's worst fears, right? Like, how do you say no to something if you're telling me it might save my kid's life? Of course I want that thing.
She says trying to buy our way to safety feels very American, just like school shootings. Meg Anderson, NPR News.
There is a reason that these cases exist. And I want to also talk about, in this case, they talked about mental health, but also gun control. And we have to begin to understand, I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism and white supremacy.
1 year ago today, 2 teachers and 2 students at Appalachian High School died in a mass shooting at their school. 7 others were injured. The school had procedures in place that may have saved lives. At the same time, the suspect showed signs of a troubled existence, and as is often the case, the signs were largely overlooked. Justin Heinze says that's often the case. He's an associate professor at the University of Michigan and director of the school safety section at the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention.
So it's trying to help not only students, but teachers in the building and parents and any members of the school community to recognize what those signs are, and then really empowering them to be able to speak out or have mechanisms that they can share their concerns. And that's one of the things that I think we've seen in Georgia over the past year is the implementation of a reporting system so that students will be able to share a concern if they have it.
We used to hear a lot about bullying and the effects on potential situations involving school violence. Is bullying still at the forefront?
Absolutely, Jim. It is so unfortunate to hear the number of students that talk about bullying and how it affects their learning and their social environment. So I think latest numbers from the YRDSS from the CDC suggest that we haven't seen a meaningful shift in the percentage of students that experience bullying. It's somewhere between 1 in 5 or 1 in 4. I think that number might be even larger for those that are experiencing bullying or some sort of threatening behavior online. And, it's a little bit easier to do in those impersonal settings. And one of the things that makes this space nervous is when you're talking about things that are happening online, that doesn't stop at 2:30 or 3 o'clock when the school bell rings. And it's this combination of access and potentially threatening behavior that can really drive students to either skip school or to struggle with their mental health, depression, or anxiety. So it's absolutely a concern. It's one of the ways that I think when you're thinking about school safety really comprehensively, it's not just thinking about school shootings and preparing for emergencies like that, but it's also what are some of the daily experiences that we can start to address. And there are actually some good anti-bullying programs that are out there. And I think that can go a long way because it's not a predetermining factor for every harmful event in the future, but it certainly can be a precipitating event for sometimes self-harm, but also sometimes retaliatory violence.
We talk about advances in evidence-based approaches to solving school shootings. We have a better understanding potentially of why a student would bring a gun to school and shoot a classmate, yet it seems that the numbers just aren't slowing down. If anything, and this is purely speculation, they're staying steady or increasing. What's the disconnect? Why aren't we solving this?
It's something that I grapple with every day, if I'm being really honest with you. You're right. When we look at data around school safety, again broadly, we have these two diverging trends. We're seeing things like school fights decrease. We're seeing things like thefts decrease. We're actually seeing a lot of school safety indicators improving over the last 10 years. The big notable exceptions in my mind are, one, mental health, which seems to be getting worse for a lot of students, but then school shootings. So the frequency as well as the severity of school shootings over the last 5 years has gone up, and we are seeing some of the highest numbers that we've seen in the last 25, 30 years. So to try to make sense of those two divergent trends has been a real challenge, and part of it I think you alluded to in your question, there is not a profile for a school shooter, right? There are school shooters that have a history of delinquent behavior, that have a history of family challenges, that have a history of mental health challenges. There are some that have precipitating events, some that don't. There's not some set of factors that we can point to systematically and say this is a concern. So it's trying to identify the means and methods that we can intervene early, and that's again going back to those sort of the attentive approaches that I referenced in terms of who is going to be in a position to notice something, who is going to be in a position to speak up, Are schools prepared? Is law enforcement prepared? Are mental health professionals prepared to intervene in the cases where something could escalate? Because my colleague will say, by the time a student has made a decision to bring a firearm to school, it's too late. So what can we do in the days, weeks, or even hours beforehand to try to stop that student from making the decision?
Dr. Justin Heinze is Associate Professor of Health Behavior and Health Equity at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. Dr. Heinze, thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, following that shooting, Georgia passed House Bill 268 to improve school safety, which includes requiring districts to provide reporting services. The bill was partly modeled on legislation drafted by Sandy Hook Promise, a nonprofit several family members impacted by the 2012 Connecticut school shooting formed. All Things Considered producer Christopher Alston spoke with the organization's chief program officer, Crystal Brown-Garand.
This requires all Georgia school districts to do three things. The first, implement an anonymous reporting system by July 2026. Second, all public school students in grades 6 through 12 will receive 1 hour of evidence-based suicide prevention training and 1 hour of evidence-based violence prevention training. And the third part, which is a powerful part, schools are also required to designate a youth-led violence prevention club on school campuses.
And the organization has found that these methods really stand out as being effective prevention steps.
Yes, we believe that gun violence is preventable when you know the warning signs of violence. So this suicide prevention training and violence prevention training helps young people to identify concerning behaviors with themselves or others. The prevention programming helps them to communicate, so to tell a trusted adult or to use a system like our Say Something Anonymous reporting system to report concerning behaviors. Very recently, the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency affirmed that our Say Something Anonymous reporting system is a viable option to help Georgia schools meet the new state requirements. And often our Say Something Anonymous reporting system is at no cost to schools.
Where does Georgia sort of stand in the ranking of states as far as having these steps in place?
There are a handful of states that have several of these types of mandates. The Save Students Act, Ohio, Louisiana, Sandy Hook Promise has supported those states in creating this model legislation. And we see that this legislation has reduced barriers for this type of programming to happen in the school setting. And so we know that because we're focused on prevention, Sandy Hook Promise nationally has prevented at least 18 credible school shootings.
Can you elaborate on the 18 instances that this anonymous reporting system has helped prevent?
So these were tips where our National Crisis Center received information about an imminent situation, that information had not been recovered, that there were weapons involved and weapons were recovered, and there was a specific written plan to conduct a school shooting.
As it relates to the Appalachian High School shooting, it seemed like they, had a number of security measures in place, and that really helped the fatality toll not be worse than it was. But at the same time, even with all those security measures, it still seems almost unpreventable at times. What are there any of the steps that you're laying out here that can really help put an end to this?
I think that one of the things that we've seen across the country and in Georgia in particular, school districts having comprehensive school safety plans. Those plans not only include, hardening measures, but really think about the emotional safety of a student. We've seen the power of prevention programming, and when young people move with their feet, right, and this is why it makes the House Bill 268 so powerful, that we are mandating that there are youth-led clubs, that there are young people inside of schools really championing the messages around knowing the warning signs of violence. They are lifting up their concerns about school safety, and I think making sure that that's a core part of school safety plans. But I think this local coordination around the plan and ensuring that there are not just reactive responses when there is a tragedy, but there are things in place to prevent tragedies before they happen. And so that's really where we hope that Georgia schools, school districts, school leaders really take and examine what are their school safety policies and practices, where might those policies and practices be strengthened, and are they building time in for prevention programming inside of the instructional day for kids and for educators as well.
Crystal Brown-Garant is the Chief Program Officer with Sandy Hook Promise. She was speaking with All Things Considered producer Christopher Alston.
We continue to follow a number of stories right here on Live Now from Fox, and I did want to transition to some breaking news into our studio as 5 historically black colleges and universities are now on alert after receiving threats. And I did want to share what each of these universities and colleges are sharing with the public right here. This is a social media post from Hampton University stating that the university has received notice of a potential threat and has ceased all non-essential activity effective immediately. They say the safety and well-being of our students, faculty, staff, and visitors remain our highest priority. All campus activities and classes are canceled today and tomorrow to include all athletic events and activities, and campus community is encouraged to conduct any meetings and remotely. So we are continuing to follow this. We also have a number of other tweets that I did want to share with you. This from Southern University and AMM College stating that this university also has received a potential threat to campus safety and is on lockdown. They say that the lockdown applies to the entire Baton Rouge landmass, which also includes Southern University Law Center, Agriculture, Research and Extension Center, and the laboratory school. They say if you are on campus, you should shelter in place until further notice, as the university is working with law enforcement agencies. We also have a number of other posts that we want to get to. This is from Alabama State University, as it has now canceled campus activities today, stating that the campus will be closed for the remainder of the day. Campus police, along with other law enforcement agencies, are actively clearing all buildings on campus. Once your building has been cleared, it says you will be permitted to leave only through the front entrance of your building. They say this is for your safety right there. So we are continuing to follow a number of other ones, including Virginia State University, stating that this university has received a threat to campus out of an abundance of caution. VSU remains on lockdown. Please continue to check for updates. And this final one that I did want to bring in, this is from Bethune-Cookman University, stating that due to a potential threat to campus safety, as a precaution, the university is currently on lockdown. All classes have been canceled. Students should return to their dorm rooms and shelter in place. All faculty and staff should head home, and those not on campus should plan to work remotely. Safety, they say, is our first priority, and we will continue to provide updates. So that is the very latest as we continue to follow all of these developments right here. We are working to gather more information just in terms of what these potential threats are, but out of abundance of caution, 5 different HBCUs are on alert after threats. This is a live look right here from Daytona. This is the area where Bethune-Cookman University is and now is currently on lockdown. So we did want to share the very latest with you, as 5 HBCUs are on alert after threats, many of them on lockdown, also canceling classes for today. And also we saw at least one of them canceling classes tomorrow as well, out of an abundance of caution. We are continuing to follow all of the very latest, and we, of course, will bring any additional information as it happens.
Every day is an ongoing massacre. Another one gets shot down in the streets, but they say it's the land of the free. No, everyone has a gun, counting
For more on the political movement Charlie Kirk helped launch right out of high school, I'll add again, we've called Kyle Spencer. She's a journalist and the author of Raising Them Right, the untold story about America's ultra-conservative youth movement and its plot for power. Good morning, Kyle. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I just want to ask you to build on what we've just heard about Charlie Kirk and the role he played in building the movement. Did he have a big idea, or was it more of his persona, being young and charismatic himself?
I think that Charlie Kirk's big idea was that the GOP needed to better brand itself and brand itself for a new generation. And he brought that idea to the forefront starting early on in 2012 when he began Turning Point USA. But he continued to evolve and continued to rethink and make ways to talk to audiences and encourage them to support the Republican Party.
So he was killed during an event on a college campus. You attended a lot of events like that when you were covering him. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what they were like?
Absolutely. Charlie Kirk did something that is very common in Christian evangelical churches, being seeker sensitive. Charlie met people where they were, which is why the debates that he did on college campuses, like the one where he unfortunately was shot, were the kinds of things that he did in order to talk to young people who may or may not agree with him and the other policies that the current Republican Party holds. Brought people in to talk and to engage them, and it was really his charisma and the energy, passion, and excitement that he had that often sold them on his ideas.
So what were the ideas that he talked about?
So Charlie Kirk started out when he began Turning Point USA and early on in his career, which started right after high school, as somebody focused on economics. He cared about the budget deficit, bloated government. He was very concerned about what he saw as of overpowering China influence in the world markets. As he evolved, he became more of a cultural warrior. He became increasingly religious, spoke often about Christian nationalism, the need for Christianity to lead the country, the Christian values to lead the country. He was a firm opposer of reproductive rights. He did not believe in gay marriage. He was very, very vocal about traditional marriage, quote-unquote traditional values, and believed that there was racism in this country, and it was very intense, and it was racism against white men.
Do you have any idea of what was so formative to him? Like, for some people they have like an origin story. Mm-hmm. Did he have one? Like, what was it that was so formative in these beliefs? For some people it's like countercultural experiences that turn them off. Like they feel that, they encounter people who they feel reject them or who did he have a story like that?
So interestingly enough, Charlie Kirk went to a high school in the suburbs of Chicago that had moved from being a majority white school to a majority black and brown school. And while he has never really said that that particular demographic change impacted his politics, it's hard to imagine that it didn't. Because Charlie really positioned himself as somebody who was supporting whiteness, white people, white culture and the white culture of this country against what he saw as efforts that were efforts to create equity in the country and to support the disenfranchised. He saw those efforts as disingenuous, ill-timed, bad for America. So to me, what I see as his origin story was his understanding early on what it felt like to feel oppressed by progressive agenda.
So the subtitle of your book is The Untold Story About America's Ultra-Conservative Youth Movement and Its Plot for Power. Could you just say a little bit more about that? Did he have a vision for himself about where he wanted to end up? Like, what was his goal?
Charlie started out just wanting to organize young people locally. Very quickly, he wanted to organize young people nationally. He wanted to talk politics, but very quickly he wanted to talk about culture, and eventually Charlie Kirk wanted to absolutely transform American culture and bring it back to an earlier time that he saw as more ideal. Charlie Kirk was one of the absolute most ambitious, arguably the most ambitious person I have ever interviewed.
So it's sad. And married young, a father, kids, and it's any sense of where this movement goes next without him, as briefly as you can.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk created Turning Point USA as a very, very strong organization. He was the spokesperson. There are many, many people behind the scenes who do the work every day.
That's Kyle Spencer. She's a journalist and the author of Raising Them Right, the untold story about America's ultra-conservative youth movement and its plot for power. Kyle, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
At this hour, we remain focused on Evergreen High School as we continue our coverage of the shooting. Today, students and staff returned to school to get their cars that they had to leave behind. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Christensen.
And I'm Sam Shocker. Tonight, 2 students remain hospitalized after being shot at their school yesterday afternoon. In the last 2 hours, the family of one of the victims, 18-year-old Matthew Silverstone, shared a picture. The family said they appreciate the community support, but added they are only focused on their loved one's recovery and respectfully request privacy.
We have live team coverage for you tonight. We are learning new details in the investigation about that timeline and who the suspect was.
Yeah, let's begin with 9 News reporter Jennifer Meckles. Jennifer, we've been talking to you, I feel like, for 24 hours straight. You are on the scene. What have you learned?
Well, guys, I think one of the biggest questions everybody always has in these situations is why, and that's something that Jefferson County investigators can't answer yet. But they are starting to get a little more information on the how this happened. They told us today that they know the shooter took the bus to school yesterday. They don't know how he procured this gun or from whom, but they said he brought a lot of ammunition with him. That he fired so many times, they said. They don't even have a count of the number of times. They say he fired throughout the school. There are 3 floors of the school. They said there's a lot of broken windows inside, bullet-ridden lockers. However, they also told us, the investigators, that a lot of lives were saved yesterday because so many students and teachers knew what to do in a lockdown. Jeffco says the shooter hit roadblock after roadblock when they could not get into rooms. We know 2 students were shot. 1 was shot inside, 1 was shot outside, and the gunman ultimately shot himself. He died from those injuries. The 2 victims are still in the hospital today. Investigators said that they've got surveillance video all throughout the school, which will help them track the movements of the shooter. They've searched his home. They tell us they've talked with his family, and they are now looking through his phone, among other things, just trying to learn more about what happened here. Jefferson County investigators tell us they still don't know the why, the motive here, but they say it looks like the goal was to hurt a lot of people.
I have to believe when you bring a gun to school and you continue to fire and reload and fire and reload, that you are on a mission. And we are grateful that he was less successful, but we're devastated that he was successful at all.
As far as trying to answer the why, a motive here, Jefferson County investigators say today, that, again, they don't really know, but one thing that they're starting to learn is they believe that the shooter was somehow radicalized. My colleague Jeremy Hohola has been spending more time today trying to better understand who this young man was. Jeremy joins me as well, live out here in Evergreen tonight, and picks up the story from there. Jeremy?
Yeah, Jennifer, you've mentioned this several times. One of the biggest questions in all of this, in cases like this, that may not be answered here is the big question: why did this happen? Why did a 16-year-old boy get access to a revolver, and why did he do this? Investigators have executed at least 3 search warrants that we know of to try and get that big answer, but there is a hint this afternoon. He may have been radicalized. There are signs that he may have been radicalized, and this is coming from the sheriff's office. Now, moving forward here, we will be minimal with how we use the image of Desmond Holly here. This is from his driver's license photo released by the sheriff's office today. This teenage boy does not have much of a footprint online that we could see or at least find. Investigators have searched his home, and they have searched his high school locker. One of the most notable revelations to come out today from the sheriff's office is the fact that this boy may have been radicalized, but they will not say anything else beyond that term, which of course raises all sorts of questions like, what was this teenage boy consuming online? Who was he talking to? Which leads us to the fact investigators have also filed a search warrant for his cell phone.
It was stated to us specifically that was radicalized through an extremist network. And clearly we take that very seriously. There's obviously a lot of work that has to go into looking at his phone, looking at his social media pages, searching his room. searching his backpack. Searching his locker. There's a lot of places to look that we hope will just give us better information as to what he was attempting to do and maybe the why. Sometimes we never find out why.
And obviously that radicalization reference there brings up all sorts of questions. Investigators were also looking into how this teenage boy got access to this revolver. In Colorado, it is a law that people have to keep their guns secured from all people who are unauthorized to get access to a gun, especially children. We've been told investigators are also looking at that legal avenue, so we'll see what happens here in the next coming weeks and months. But we've been told the suspect's parents are cooperating with investigators. Back to you.
Yeah, Jeremy, what a sobering, I mean, we think about how much our children are online, and what a sobering revelation to know that he possibly was radicalized online. That's something that we will have to unpack and learn more in later days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jeremy Hohola, thank you.
Today, the Jeffco Sheriff set up a resource center at Bergen Meadows Elementary School. Jeffco Sheriff's Office also has investigators in there in case someone saw something, witnessed something that they haven't told officials about yet. This is for students, staff, or really anyone in that area that needs some support.
I can't encourage it enough to at least stop by, because if they're not interested in therapy and resources right now, in the next coming weeks, that very much can change. Trauma is really changing, ever changing, and so we wanted them to know that whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, 3 weeks, 3 months, a year from now, we're all going to be here.
The center is open until 5 today, but will be open again tomorrow from 9 till 1 in the afternoon.
Good morning. It's Thursday, September 11th. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed yesterday. He was at an event at Utah Valley University. The 31-year-old is the founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative youth organization. He was shot in the neck about 20 minutes after he began speaking. Police are searching for the shooter. We're getting your reaction to the death of Charlie Kirk this first hour. Jason is in Alabama, Independent Line. Good morning, Jason.
Hey, good morning. I think we can call something a tragedy without lying. Charlie Kirk was not a saint. He was not anybody that shouldn't have died, first off, but a victim of the very policies he advocated. He advocated for free, unrestricted access to guns. And somewhere between 80 and 100, or around about 100 people die or are murdered every day in America. Most of those people to guns. And when those regular people die, the people that now are decrying Charlie Kirk being shot and killed do nothing. They say thoughts and prayers, just like you just played. And the Bible says that faith without works is dead. So you can pray all day long, but unless and until you're actually going to do something to address it, of course, at some point, the violence, gun violence specifically in America, is going to stop at the doorstep of people like Charlie Kirk. And you know, today they're going to mourn and they're going to clutch their pearls. But a week from now, when Charlie Kirk is put in the ground, they're going to go back to business as usual. The funding public services for mental health, making sure that everybody can get a bazooka and moving on with their life. When children can be killed in a church praying and nothing happened, miss me with all of this stuff about Charlie Kirk. We don't know why he was shot. We don't know if it was politically motivated or not. But in a country with with more guns than people, yeah, people are going to get killed by guns. Charlie Kirk is not special in that regard.
All right, Jason, and we have a fact check from Snopes. Charlie Kirk once said some gun deaths, quote, worth it in order to have the Second Amendment. So the this website, Snopes.com, has the full transcript of what he said. He was asked by an audience member. This is in April 2023. I had a question related to the Second Amendment. We saw the shooting that happened recently. A lot of people upset, but I'm seeing people argue that they want to take our Second Amendment rights away. How do we convince them that it's important to have the right to defend ourselves and all that good stuff? It has the full remarks of what Charlie Kirk said about that, but here's what's getting a lot of attention. He said, But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe. This is Larry in Fort Calhoun, Nebraska, Republican line. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. How you doing? I predicted this almost 10 years ago. I said that if the media doesn't stop their rhetoric and their demagogue against Trump, somebody's going to get killed. And sure enough, I was right. And I blame a lot of this, and not just the Democrats, but it's the media too, because every night when you turn on your TV, it's hate, hate, hate. Racist this, white supremacist that, fascist, whatever. And after a while, it just kind of gets old. And back in my days, when I was a kid, I watched Walter Cronkite, Howard K. Smith, Huntley Brinkley, and they didn't like Johnson or Nixon, but they never, ever thought of trying to use their media power to take out a president. And today's media has a lot to blame for this. Every day we get up, we hear how we're racist, we're homophobe, we're this and that and everything. And it gets old after a while. But I got to say this about C-SPAN. I'm very disappointed on Brian Lamb. I'm surprised he hasn't got up here and said to the staff, when a caller comes in and calls the president a pedophile, a rapist, and makes false allegations, that you let this go on. This it's not fun. I used to get up, and I used to enjoy turning on Washington Journal. And lately, it's just been miserable. The Democrats have so much hate, but I got to ask the Democrats, of all the hate every day in, day out, what good is hate? I would love to have a Democrat explain to me what good hate does.
And on the line for Democrats, Al Griffith, Indiana. Good morning.
Yes, Mimi. Obviously, this is a tragedy, but it was an avoidable tragedy, just like Ashley Babbitt was avoidable. If on the Dem side, we attempted to talk reason and convince people like Ashley Babbitt and Charlie Kirk not to traffic in so much violent and targeted language against so many people that aren't white males. This is they've been caught up in a whirlwind of violent rhetoric now ever since Rush Limbaugh, and it's been decades of targeting minorities, a decade of targeting vulnerable minorities, people. And when you're subject to that, I'm sure Charlie Kirk listened to Rush Limbaugh for decades. It's an accumulation over time, and that is what Trump in the Oval Office is trying to capitalize on, is a grand change here. And change is coming because the economic change is going to happen. And the religious right is depending on a cataclysmic and violent overthrow of the current state, and it sure seems like this is they're making it happen as best they can. And unfortunately, Charlie Kirk was a part of that dialogue. He contributed to that, like many other talk shows. AM radio across America has been broadcasting for decades and planning. Speaking and targeting and advocating for an abundance of guns in this nation. It's all coming together in this insane hurricane of hate. I hope reason prevails. And
all right, Al.
I guess Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, September 13, 2025. So I have been told. Gus was looking forward to doing the reports and everything. I thought an important week. We had so many things happened. We were more than halfway through the broadcast, and all of my Wi-Fi died. At my residence, I have my Wi-Fi. That died. I actually was written out as disabled. I've never seen that for a network, to be written as disabled. We didn't have an earthquake or a thunderstorm. I didn't drop anything, shoot anything. Wi-Fi had been on all day. I'd uploaded the audio for the news clips. Obviously, you heard them. Audio, and we had the program on. Literally, I think we were more than halfway through the audio segments, and the Wi-Fi went out. I'm thinking, this would be a brief thing. It'll come back on. I was out of this world wrong. It has still not come back on. I'm on my phone. I'm not on my headset. My phone doesn't have the same reception quality audio. And my phone Wi-Fi, which is not connected to my house Wi-Fi at all, my phone Wi-Fi is not even working. We're in Seattle. They have other networks, that I typically could access in the neighborhood. My house Wi-Fi, like I said, not working, showing it's disabled, which is wild because literally it was just on within the last 60 minutes. The other Wi-Fi in the neighborhood also not, or at least I am not able to access. Like I said, normally that would not be the case. Usual suspects, super frustrating, like I said, because I thought there were important news reports that that would be the case every week, but certainly this week I thought there were important reports that took place that I was looking forward to discussing. If anything, I would just reiterate, replacing white supremacy with justice is super difficult. That's why I have such disdain for all of your COWS listeners, TV suggestions, and people coming to just talk to me, and or any non-white people really, just for conflict, to name call, to just disagree. Victims guaranteed qualified. I have a different opinion. I don't agree with what your opinion is. Well, so what? And or contacting me to talk about television. I do not care what you watched on TV. I'm so disgusted by that all the time. I wouldn't care who's in it. You sound like an idiot. I've said that for years. You're discourteous. You're being disrespectful. You're being rude. I've said I do not care what you all watch on television. Contact your white friends and tell them what you watched on Netflix, YouTube, whatever it is, and you all can have a grand discussion. I'm never engaging in conversation with you all about what you watched on television because I don't care. I think it's juvenile, it's immature, and in fact, I had someone contact me on social media this week, and they said, I did not understand why you block so many people. I could read you the exact post, but I don't have Wi-Fi. They contacted me and said, I did not understand why you block so many people on social media. I understand a little bit better now. I really don't care if you all understand or not, but I did not want to be on social media to begin with. I would not be on social media if I was not doing this broadcast, counter-racist efforts. I wouldn't even be there. And then I just look at the conduct. The vast majority of individuals that I come in contact with on social media, whether they are bots, whether they are individuals classified as white pretending to be non-white, there's a lot of that, and or these are just non-white people, victims of racism wherever they are in the known universe. Most of these individuals in those three groupings are, generally speaking, when they contact me, they are talking about something ADOS related, they're talking about something entertainment related, they are name-calling black people and or something in conflict. I don't agree with these black people. I don't agree or I'm in conflict with these non-white people. Something related to alcohol, frequently at bars, clubs, showing off what alcoholic concoctions white people have allowed them to have. Hopefully they'll be able to consume without going home and smashing up a telephone pole or killing someone. Reparations. Did I get conflict with black people and name-calling black people because there's so much of that? That is the vast majority of the content that I see when people contact me, message me about social media, something, It's related to something that I just mentioned right there. It's very rare that I have someone contact me talking about something we were talking about on the program, contact me talking about even something constructive. Hey, a book I read, nonfiction. That's generally not what I have people contact me about. Certainly not entertainment, sports that they watched, what they think is going to happen on the second week of the NFL, who they think is going to win the NBA championship, how many more years Bron James going to play. Nonsense. Just total nonsense. When is the next Kendrick Lamar album coming out? Total nonsense. At minimum, these are things that have no concern as it relates to the context of white supremacy, Gus T. In fact, these are subject matters I've told you all I'm not even interested in. So what did I just say? These are all things you should talk about with your white friends. See what they think. Yeah, I am ruthless on social media. It's really hard to do counter-racist work in any way, shape, form. I have a difficult enough time just doing the broadcast, supposed to be broadcasted Monday. White gas. Now I got to sit here and wonder, man, is the Wi-Fi going to be acting goofy again? I can't even, rely that we can broadcast from my residence without the Wi-Fi being all stupid for some reason. And to go out in the middle of a program, like I said, like if I had not paid the bill, didn't have my receipts for all that would be different. It had been on all day long and went out in the middle of a live broadcast. Like, come on. Usual suspects all the way through. Anywho, with all of that difficulty, that's again why I say do not contact non-white people for conflict. Shouldn't be a non-white person that you haven't spoken to. You haven't spoken to Tyrone for 5 years, but I got to contact him now just because I disagree with what he said. Like, that's nonsense. And we do a lot of that. A lot of that. And contacting about entertainment. What we watched on Netflix, got to call Tyrone, tell him what I watched on Hulu and YouTube the last month. Childish. It's even difficult because, like I said, I was so discombobulated the last 30 minutes or so, like, what is going on? Where is the Wi-Fi? I can't even, disrupted my ability to even contact, one, because now I had to be on the phone for this. I normally wouldn't be using my phone for this. And then two, I have no Wi-Fi, so I'm, crippled in terms of trying to figure out some things. So, and I don't even have a switchboard, so even if I wanted to, I could not go to callers to see if folks have commentary, thoughts, the Charlie Kirk shooting and what have you. Don't even have a switchboard to be able to access, which, again, baffles my mind. I have independent Wi-Fi on my phone. How is that not working either? And at the same time, like, come on. Anyway, I will only say quickly, the deportations to the third world, that's something that I had first seen in the UK that was sending folks to Rwanda, wherever that is. If I'm, coming over the border from Mexico or Honduras or wherever, and it's, no, Pedro, you got to go to Rwanda or wherever they send you at on the continent. And like I said, they're doing this around the world. Folks that were coming in from other parts of Africa. I mean, the continent is massive. So, man, like, just I was on the continent. Let's say I came here from Somalia or wherever, Syria, wherever, and Rwanda, how you even spell that? I don't have no cousins in Rwanda. Why are you sending me to Rwanda? That almost seemed like punishment. Like, what? Where? How? I can't even imagine how long that flight is. You're not getting no direct flight nonstop. If they're booting you out of the country, they're going to give you one of them Connecticut. You might have to come to Mexico before they end up getting you to Rwanda. Like, Jesus Christ, man. The global Jair Bolsonaro, 27-year sentence for that coup. I'm so glad they included in the first post report about the connection that was January 8th in Brazil, the deep connection with January 6th here in the U.S. I would not be surprised if President Trump issues him a pardon. I don't think it works that way since they're down in South America, but, oh, man, President Trump is going to get him out of jail. There is no way he's going to do no 27 years for a coup. I would just keep an eye on that one. And they put up more photos this week of all of that violence and disruption from January 8, 2023. We were reading about Brazil at that time period, too, in the Catherine Massey Book Club. But they put those pictures up again. Same thing I said 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. I did not see anybody in those photos who were running around, Bolsonaro, that's my dude, and he needs another term, and president for life, and all the rest of it. All of the people, ALL, all of the people that I saw running around in the streets, they did not look like Kaylee's cousins, great-grandchildren, nephews, nieces, nothing. These look like people that would be classified as white. Maybe they speak Portuguese or what have you, but these look like people that would be classified as white that had very little melanin running around in the street. Bolsonaro, Lulu stolen. Where are the black people? Brazil got more black people than anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Where were they at? Bolsonaro ain't got no black supporters who wanted to come out and get his back. The report on the lowering, and even I had mentioned BRICS before, that acronym mentioning all of these countries, so it's, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I mean, Brazil is there when they say President Trump and others, white people, when they mention BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, and some other so-called countries in there. But most of them, these are regions with people that would be classified as not white, with the exception of Russia, and again, they're the Reds. But with the exception of them, these are all countries that are thought of as non-white so-called countries. Brazil in that mix. President with the tariffs and everything else and visa restrictions and deportations, it's these dark people. The report where they discussed the drop in test scores, that was one that I thought was really important. And really, for parents, I do not have children, something I've, confessed openly for a long time. No reservations. That would be something to discuss before you have children. And because the test scores have been dropping for such a long time, they said these test scores have been going down since for a decade, if my memory is correct. That was before the audio went out. They said the test scores have been dropping for a decade. That's before the Rona. Matter of fact, if you go back a decade, Obeezy is still in the White House. Like, Jesus Christ, that's 2 Trump terms, Biden, and a teaspoon of Obama in the White House. Probably been going back further than that. But they said math and reading scores have been dropping, and particularly at the lowest of the low. Now, you know who that is. Tyrone. That right there. To have a report like that, that's why I'm vicious. I do not give an F what you've been watching on television. I'm repulsed. I would rather you not talk to me at all. I would rather you name call me. Gus, you're a coon. You're a no-count ape, gorilla, Negra. I would rather you do that than send me some content about, what I watch on television. That's exactly what is wrong with us right now. That is exactly how racists have conditioned and trained us to sit around and watch TV and play PS5 all day long and then go tomorrow and sit in front of the screen all day long watching black males get brain damage. That's how we have been conditioned. We are going to have to totally change how we use our time and energy, and sitting around watching TV is not going to get it done. Not even close. Especially you got scores like that in school. In fact, before you get to the bedroom, like, whoa. Test scores have been going in the toilet, metaphor deliberately so, for a decade. Now, we're going to contribute to this. We're going to just hop in bed, and now we got Tyrone Jr., and within a month, we're not even going to be speaking to each other. You're going to be blaming me, I'm going to be blaming you, and we both going to have somebody else. What about Tyrone Jr.? Are we going to send him to school? We didn't have no alternative plan. If I hate your guts and you hate my guts, how we do the homeschool, if we don't talk to each other, can we do that and peacefully coexist? For Tyrone Jr., if you're not going to talk about all that before you get to the bedroom, these low test scores, what we going to do to offset that? Don't we want our child to thrive academically? We just want them to be eating fruit by the foot, illiterate, graduate high school, and can barely spell their name. That's what we want for Tyrone Jr.? Talk to your offspring about that now. Like, that is a part. Being an attempted counter-racist parent, and that's counter-racism right there. Not doing this old throwaway children stuff. There's a whole lot of levels like, okay, great. They didn't get poisoned and driven off a cliff with the Hart family. White lesbians, great. You're going to send them to public school where they still probably bump into the hearts because you got the white women teachers. You're going to send them to public school so they can barely learn how to read, barely learn how to count to 10 on their fingers. Questions. Let's see. And then it was on and popping for school shootings and such. Now, I will say they had the report in Missouri about the kids are criminals. You can be a criminal and still a child, yes, making it seem mutually exclusive. You're going to be one or the other, like ye. I contrast that. We got a 45 in Georgia. The young white teen shot up the school in Georgia last year. His dad is on trial facing charges for his negligence in all of this. I think his dad's name is Colin. His son's name is Colt. But I just look at that because they said that there were signs that there was something wrong with young Colt 45, but nothing was done about that. Echo. Just like technical difficulties with this broadcast, I have heard that before with these white school shooters where what? Bill and Reb had plastic bombs before. What? Bill and Reb had written all these reports and racist comments and bullied people and y'all ain't done nothing about all this? They get out of the juvenile. Matter of fact, Bill and Reb, they exited the juvenile detention program early, breaking in that van. Remember? Felony breaking in the van. They got up, said these are two of the best young lads we've ever had. They didn't give them all the excuses and bonus points for why we got to detain y'all and help you get your life right. You know, you look like you're on a bad path. You're going to do some bad things. And they do that to Colt 45. They didn't do that to Dylan, Sandy. You just stack them all up. Got to Colorado again this week. Now, they did all that talking about Charlie Kirk, who I'd never heard of before this week. They barely said a peep about it. Wait a minute. They had a school shooting in Jefferson County, Colorado on this week. The week of 9/11 on this week. They had a shooting. School just started. They had a shooting in Jefferson County, Colorado. The Jefferson County, Colorado. Sue Klebold, Jefferson County, Colorado. Yes. Said this young white teen was radicalized. Real talk. I said radicalized. Did Desmond Holly, that's the shooter's name, did he spend time with Sue Klebold? That's how he got radicalized. I don't hear nothing about no Osama bin Laden and ISIS. And it really, I don't even want to hear nothing about being online because, hey, I got Wi-Fi problems. Maybe they do in Jeff County, Colorado, too. I know this young fellow, if he in Jefferson County, he could have walked to see Sue Klebold and got radicalized. Let me see Bill. Yes. Let me see old Bill and Reb. Yes, I feel the spirit. Yes. You got any of them pipe bombs? I'd enjoyed it a lot more if my headset and Wi-Fi were working correctly. That would be another one. I would talk to your children about that report about the dropping scores and Columbine. Again, it wasn't Columbine. It was Evergreen High School, but it was Jefferson County. They had the same sheriff's department out there talking about it. Yes, we learned quite a bit from what happened with Reb and Bill. Thankfully, we didn't have any casualties, at least at this point. I don't think they've had any casualties. They just had students shot, and then the shooter, Desmond Holly, allegedly took his own life, but no fatalities from the shootings. I guess they say we thank Reb, Bill, Sue Klebold for that. They taught us so much way back when. Isaiah Shoals, let's see, the report on the amount of money that these school shootings have generated. I'm not surprised about that at all. Much like 9/11, there was so much technology and resources and everything. Hey, just the salaries for the school resource officers alone, because that was one of the first things that they asked with the Evergreen shooting. Was there a school resource officer on duty? If so, where was he? Should we have two? All of that. Just that alone is a massive business. And then for some of the places, now they got all the highfalutin smart technology that can detect if a gun has been fired in the premises and can alert law enforcement officials and that sort of thing, lockdown technology and all the rest of it. So I'm not surprised. And even people coming in and doing all those drills and such. I'm not saying that's a waste of money, but That is the system of white supremacy. It does not surprise me at all. They know Reb and Bill will continue to shoot up the schools, and we're not going to be preemptive about stopping them. So, yeah, we will need a whole business, probably for a lot of white people. I cannot imagine Leroy and Lakeisha having any sort of business connected to that at all, where they make the technology to lock the school down or alarms that'll let people know, or where they come in and do the drills to show people how to lock the door and all that. I cannot imagine them allowing black people to have businesses where they can go to schools and earn some money and maybe even go to offices and such. Talk about lockdown procedures. Let's see. The threats to the HBCUs, that would be one right there. I remember during COVID they were talking about non-white students, more of them applying to HBCUs because of all the racism and George Floyd and everything that was happening during that time period. All well and good. You do not escape the system of white supremacy. You do not escape the system of white supremacy. All of that is goofy. We do not understand the system of white supremacy. You do not, racism is bad, I'm going to go to Africa. That's stupid. Racism is bad, I'm going to go to a HBCU. Do you know one of the places that white people loot first? And I said loot, L-O-O-T, still Katrina times. It's the HBCUs. You say, well, I don't have to see as many white people directly. Maybe. Maybe not. Sometimes they have white faculty who work at the HBCUs. Maybe. Maybe not. Directly or indirectly, you will feel the influence of racist man, racist woman, racist child. I say frequently, most of these HBCUs are named after white people. Either way, you get there and it's all black people will get. Now you just got exactly what you heard, a very attractive target. And haven't we heard this before? I remember this. This was within the last 2 years. They were doing the same thing. It was at the beginning of the school year, too. Not just this. Jackson. Talk about that little fellow who did the shooting down there in Jackson. They had a white man who went to an HBCU in North Florida, went there and was shooting up the campus. They think he tried to get into, or he went to the school first. That was it. He went to the school first and tried to shoot, and he couldn't get access, and then he went to the Dollar General and shot. I think he may have shot and killed like 3 people there, what have you. But we had a guest come on the program and talk about it, how this was probably some lame, no-count, down-and-out race soldier. I'm not doing anything constructive with my life. I'm upset about these niggers, white genetic annihilation. I'll go shoot up some young, promising black geniuses who are trying to make the best out of their life. We just talked about that. In addition to, this is just the most recent round of threats where they were calling in bomb threats and all these other swatting events and such, where they were having to shut the campus down, evacuate, call the police in, even if they find out it is just a hoax. What kind of trauma is that? You got this, especially this week, you got 9/11, you got the shooting in Colorado, Charlie Kirk gets shot. They couldn't even find that shooter for a few days, although he's in custody now. You got all that happening. And then, oh, my goodness, they coming to get the niggers, too. Oh, my God. And then you see it's happening on multiple campuses. So you talking to your other friends in school, and they're at Spelman or Howard or wherever they are. Oh, man, it happened here, too. Blah, blah, blah. What kind of trauma is that? Same thing I said for the students in Colorado who are mostly white in Jefferson County. That's kind of a racially restricted region, remembering from my study. I asked Isaiah Scholl's dad, Michael Scholes, about that. Did you know Jefferson County don't really have no black people before you went? He said, not really. Wouldn't have stopped me from going, but no, not really. Any hoodles, that's another one I would share if you have young black people, students who are at any of these HBCUs. I would share if they're in college, even if they're not in the HBCU, I would share just so that they can be awares in case anything dangerous happens on their campus, and because the school year just started. Even if you got students who are not quite college age yet, share what you can look forward to in the system of white supremacy. And again, what Gus says all the time, normally for workplace racism, no such place as safety. In the workplace, in the classroom, no such place as safety in the system of white supremacy racism. That's why you can't escape. We can't escape. Let's see. My man, Charlie Kirk, might have to see if he wrote a book or what have you to read about him, but I would love to get more details. Racism against white people. It sounds like white men specifically. And the irony, it was white-on-white crime that felled Charlie Kirk, another white man that took him out. Just like with Luigi Mangione, President Trump came out there this week talking all that left-wing violence. No, man, white-on-white crime. And that way you can be more inclusive, because then you can bring in Dylan Roof and all the red tops. You can bring in all of it. Fellow that took the shots at you in Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, he didn't even mention in Colorado this week, man. How you leave that out? That just happened. Cold 45, you get it all in. White-on-white violence, part of white genetic. And now white people might even begin behaving a little bit more what they call niggardly. Well, I was just griping about. We do all that name calling and fussing, black people fussing with other black people as we've been conditioned to be anti-black, conflict with other victims of racism. I don't know. That might be a part of end-stage white supremacy, where there is more conflict amongst race soldiers, white people name-calling and killing each other. That might be. I don't know. We will have to pay attention. But, I mean, hey, isn't that Charlie Kirk? White-on-white violence. Now, I mean, they say that's a, what do they say, false flag or staged or whatever the case may be. I don't know. It seems like you got a fatality. That's AI, fakery or whatever, but it seems like we got a fatality unless we've been duped. White-on-white crime. But I would love to get more details, because I didn't know about this fella, Kirk. White people are victims of racism? Poppycock. You sound like a race soldier for sure, going out telling a lie like that. But matter of fact, were you saying that when you got shot in Utah? White people are victims of racism? How? Obama then ran around and smacked you upside the head, kept you from getting in school, made sure that you couldn't get your flight. You've been late 3-4 times in the past year because obesity. Michelle Obama come and make life hard on you. Al Sharpton, Benjamin Crump, we heard him in the audio. Is that true? Come on, man. Come on in. They said he got a whole youth movement, so it's a whole general. Well, they can't be too many because white people aren't having too many children. So the small group of white youth who were champions of, or he was their champion, Mr. Kirk. Their champion was his message to them. Is we got to watch out and band together about this white racism against white people, we mean? Racism against white males in particular, we mean? What? Do what? And the guns. And the guns. They said, hey, I'm all right, even if you got to bust a cap and kill 3-4 people. Hey, Second Amendment. Dr. Welsing all over. That's why you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand white supremacy, especially. You're not going to be symbolically castrating me. While sick white brothers already having a tough time. Old Beezy done lumped us upside the head and everything. Got to have my gun. Even if we shoot it, hey, it shot me. Oh, well. Got to have my gun. If he has a book, or if anybody has written a book about him, I guess there'll probably be bunches of books coming now that all this has happened. But Catherine Massey Book Club, what did Charlie Kirk have to say about racism against white people? I played that C-SPAN report at the end. Oh, well, yeah, I was correct. C-SPAN, that's Washington Journal. That is a specific program on C-SPAN from 2 days ago, and they were talking about the Charlie Kirk shooting at the time. The shooting suspect had not been arrested. He has now. But you heard just random people calling in, and now I don't know the racial classification of any of these folks. If I had to wager, the fellow who was talking about he was so upset because of all of the racism against white people, sound like he was agreeing with what Charlie Kirk said and saying that he gets so tired of turning on, I guess, C-SPAN and other news networks and racism this and white supremacy this and fascism this. And whoa, brother. What news channel do you watch? We need to turn to the station that you are with it every day and all the time. You talk about white people are racist, white supremacy this, fascism this. What station do you listen? Is it the Context of White Supremacy? What do you listen to where that is the regular content? We just heard a variety of news reports from all over the world, and I don't remember being besieged by people talking about racism. I heard racism against white people, but I don't remember, even in some of the reports where they're talking about racism. Tyrone and Leroy getting arrested underage in Missouri, they didn't say anything about racism there. They didn't call anybody a white supremacist. They didn't say anything about fascism. Same thing, Jefferson County. They didn't say anything about racism. Bromstein, none of it. Taking folks out, you going to Rwanda. They didn't say nothing about racism. What news report are you listening to? And are you inferring that they, they said, maybe, did they say DEI maybe? And you're, yeah, they're going to talk about that racism thing. I can only remind, hey, a major code in the system of white supremacy racism is you are not supposed to talk about white supremacy racism, and it's primarily we, the victims of racism, we are not supposed to talk about racism. I guess that's why what I said before, when I look on social media, the people that pretend to be non-white, whether they are or not, bots, white people, actual victims, most of the time we're not talking about racism. Most of the time we're complaining about, hey guys, these niggas weren't born here. This is not in particular order, or entertainment. What is it coming out? That Coon Drake, I hate his guts. Alcoholic beverages, and this Mad Dog 2022 night. Reparations, when white we gonna give us our nickels? That's most of the time what I see us talking about. Not anything in depth, not anything in constructive, not anything in scientific detail. Just stuff we watched on YouTube, Netflix. When we going out to the shindig, new shoes that I got, new outfit that I got, niggers that I don't like. That's how we've been trained to think. And that kind of is the essence of niggerization, and not using our brain computer. Lauren had found that segment about the brain-computer interfaces, where they got all this new technology, and of course we've heard someone use that phrasing before about the brain computer, but that's what I'm saying, like that's what race soldiers, even though I think it was a non-white person during the interview, but man, that's race, that's another one right there. I don't think they got a bunch of Leroy and Lakeisha out there making the next generation of brain-computer interface so that you get your larynx crushed when they shoot up the high school this week, you can still talk. They can put, some little nodes on your skull, and they can hear your thoughts. Like, man, them white children still shooting up the school. And you'll still be able to talk. But I think they got that technology from the user. The same people that are responsible for my Wi-Fi not working, I think is the same people cranking out the brain-computer interfaces. And even that, they said, oh my God, is this going to be sending commercials into my brain computer? I can't even turn them out. Or recording all of my thoughts and ideas. They said they can capture kind of your internal monologue. Like, oh my God, this coon Dusty really ain't get on mine. And they capture all that and write all that. They're like, oh my Lord. Maybe I want to share all that with the whole world. They have a transcript of all my inner thoughts. What does it mean to be white? That's why I said, like, a lot of it would just be sitting around with your offering. Study this complex, confusing world that is dominated by white supremacy racism. Let us study and think about this world that we are in, and what are we supposed to be doing? Are we supposed to be watching TV 5 hours a day, then waste another 5 hours a day talking about our 5 hours of screen time? Is that what we're supposed to be doing in the system of white supremacy racism? Just asking questions. Anywho, again, I would have done a little more to at least look to see, oh man, switchboard and Pupify and all that, but no Wi-Fi at all. I even looked at some of the networks. It looks like networks, maybe. I'm not sure, but it does look a little strange. To go investigate. Maybe I'll let people know once I get back. Was this widespread? Was this like a neighborhood thing where many people lost Wi-Fi access at this time? I'll report back. But yes, I do not have my switchboard at all. Bummer. Hopefully I'll be able to get the archive uploaded, and at least, some of my thoughts about what transpired this week and the audio clips, which I, always think are important. Just a snippet of some of the important things that happened over the past week. We will be here on Monday, I believe, white people permitting. We will be here on Monday. We should have a white guest. Hopefully the Wi-Fi will cooperate somewhere in 206. And then will be normal schedule Thursday, neutralizing workplace racism. Friday, our third installment on Susan Smith, or the book is The Sins of the Mother, but about Susan Smith, the lying white heifer who killed her children and blamed it on a privileged black dude in South Carolina. Third installment on Friday. So Monday, Thursday, Friday at this point. You can tune in on Monday, see if there are other program dates as we move forward. That said, wacky all the time. I guess apologies. Couldn't get to folks if they had thoughts and what have you on Charlie Kirk. It looks like they'll probably be talking about this for at least a week, probably longer. So we'll hopefully have opportunities to discuss the whole debacle. Am I the only person who was ignorant about Charlie Kirk? We can see if other people, did you know about this dude? Have you heard about this dude before? Have you heard him talking about guns and racism against white people? I missed all of that. That's what I'm not interested in TV programs like, yes, news reports on Charlie Kirk talking about racism against white people, or the gun component, because that's kind of what do you need the gun for? Who are you going to shoot? Leroy. Anywho, but yes, if people, hopefully, people will have thoughts, observations on all this down the road when we get our Wi-Fi back working next week. Certainly you can email and share your thoughts, observations around what has transpired with the Charlie Kirk case. And then the HBCU, do we have any people who have offspring, HBCU, or faculty members, HBCUs? You have family, relatives, HBCU. I know retired firefighter graduated from an HBCU, but do we have folks like that kind of? I thought it was serious. That's why I played it. But do we have people who, were impacted by all of that? Like I said, that's for sure one. If you got people talking about, oh man, it's a shame what happened to Charlie Kirk in Utah. Did I say racially restricted region? I definitely want to make sure I don't go out before in Utah, where they don't even have no niggers, racially restricted region, Utah, go out there and get shot by a white man. Anyway, I would make sure to bring up the HBCUs. If we're going to spend all this time talking about poor Charlie Kirk and all that's terrible, what happened to him, and woe is us, and what we going to do. I even had somebody, they were talking to me because everybody was talking about this week. They were talking to me in the grocery store, and they said, I bet white people will act on gun control now. And I looked at them, this was a victim, and I looked at them like they were crazy. Like, dude, what? You are mistaken. I said, man, I didn't even know. I told them the same thing I'm telling y'all. I didn't even know anything about Charlie Kirk, but I know they said exactly what they said in Washington Journal. Charlie Kirk got speeches saying if a white person or if someone should have to die or if someone, plural, should have to die, that's okay. We got to keep that Second Amendment, keep our guns. After I told them, man, please, they can kill Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk's white, blonde wife, Charlie Kirk's relatives, neighbors, more white people in Utah if you want to. We're not changing no Second Amendment, confiscating no gun. I didn't hear nothing about we need to do had a background. I didn't hear none of that. I heard them come out and call names to Democrats, so-called leftists, OBZ, or so-called Democrats in general. Lump Luigi Mangione, and that's all I know. We don't get these gun laws together, and this is absurd. We just not going to have people running around here really good. I didn't get none of that. I don't have Wi-Fi, so maybe I missed it all. Anyway, as I said, we'll be here Wi-Fi permitting on Monday. Much obliged. If you had commentary, write them down. We'll try to share. Maybe we can make time on Monday. Folks can share their thoughts, observations about the news segments and such that we didn't get into today. That said, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We need fully functioning brain computers to solve our massive problem, the system of white supremacy, racism, white people. Creator, we ask that you help us Remember, stop saying not all white people are racist. Stop name-calling black people on social media and beyond. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be raped by Mary Kay or drowned in the lake by Susan Smith. Stop gossiping. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out without Wi-Fi. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.